At this time on Al Jazeera.
Afghanistan is faced with a huge challenge.
Relations have gone really sour between us and our allies.
We have inflicted considerable damage on the enemy.
The people who make international headlines.
Ultimately, the truth will out.
They want to stop this publication of information that embarrasses them.
Make time for Sir David Frost. Frost over the world. At this time on Al Jazeera.
This is Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the News Hour, live from Doha. I'm Lauren Taylor from Al Jazeera's news centres here in Doha, Washington, D.C. and London. These are the main stories.
The immediate departure of Muammar Gaddafi within 72 hours.
Negotiating an exit, Libya's opposition says Gaddafi will not be prosecuted at home if he steps down in the next 3 days.
I'm Shem Ratansi in Washington. We'll report on how that offer has been received internationally. We'll have the latest reaction from the United Nations in New York.
Fighting back, rebels in the town of Bin Jawad sustained serious injuries following airstrikes by Gaddafi's forces.
And in London, I'm Felicity Barr with the latest from Europe, including $100 million a day. We'll take a look at the amount Libya is losing in oil revenue since the uprising began. Violence breaks out in a Yemeni prison as the anti-government uprising continues throughout the country. Hello, Libya's opposition rebels have made an offer to Muammar Gaddafi to prevent the oil-rich nation from descending into an all-out civil war. They're asking their leader of more than 40 years to stop bombing his people and leave Libya within 72 hours. In return, they promise that Gaddafi won't face prosecution under Libyan law. All the while, the fighting continues across this vast country. Well, there are reports that Gaddafi's tanks and warplanes are bombarding the town of AlJazeera outside the capital, Tripoli. Libyan state television says it has recaptured the town, but the rebels say they're still inside the city. Moving over now to Bin Jawad, we've received just recently the pictures of the fighting there, and rebels are having to contend with aerial bombardment, and the injuries sustained have been brutal. On to Ras Lanuf, witnesses have talked of as many as 6 airstrikes. Reports suggest that residents are trying to leave in a hurry. We'll have more on the fighting in a moment. But first, Lawrence Lee has more on the opposition offer to Muammar Gaddafi.
For a man with such a strong line in bombast and exaggeration, the suggestion of Gaddafi making a deal on the quiet which would allow him to escape Libya unscathed is startling. It's claimed he raised the suggestion on Sunday when opposition forces were on the road to Sirte, his hometown, and before the Libyan army had retaken the town of Bin Jawad and pushed the rebels back. According to Al Jazeera's sources in Libya, Gaddafi sent this man, a former prime minister who's from Benghazi, as his envoy to the shadow government there, with an offer which would end the violence. It seems his main demands were aimed less at ensuring the future of the country and more to make sure that he and his family could continue living in luxury. So it's alleged that Gaddafi wanted assurances that he wouldn't be prosecuted for crimes against humanity, that he and his family would be able to leave to a country of his choosing, and that he would retain assets, many of which have been seized in countries from Europe to Japan. The message back from Benghazi to Gaddafi was equally specific: end the bombing and get out of Libya within 72 hours.
We see no objection in ending bloodshed among the Libyans in return for 2 key demands. First, Muammar Gaddafi stopping air and inland bombardment of Zawiya, Misrata and Ras Lanuf. Second, his immediate departure within 72 hours. And in return, we guarantee that he will not be prosecuted domestically.
What prompted Gaddafi to fold in this way is unclear, since his troops have been gaining ground. Perhaps as well as fears about prosecution, he's becoming concerned about the growing pressure from the international community to raise the threat of a military response.
We've got NATO, as we speak, consulting in Brussels around a wide range of potential options. including potential military options, in response to the violence that continues to take place inside of Libya.
There may be many ordinary people in Benghazi who see Gaddafi's demands as outrageous, and perhaps the authorities too. But equally, if Gaddafi were to leave the country, they could surely still claim an historic victory, and the authorities in Benghazi are certainly concerned about saving lives as well. Inevitably, Libyan state TV has denied an offer even being made. The next move now surely belongs to Gaddafi. One final point, how Gaddafi's own soldiers feel about the prospect of being abandoned may prove interesting as well. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Well, correspondent Hoda Abdul Hamid joins us live from Benghazi now, the seat of the uprising in the east. So, Hoda, this offer of negotiation, does it come with any authority, do you think? I mean, given that the person there is not really elected, how does it work?
Well, it's really a very confusing image. I mean, the National Council is basically a self-appointed council of representatives of all the liberated city, as they call them. So certainly most of the cities here in the east of the country, and they do say that they have members who are from Tripoli and Zawiya, even though they don't want to declare who they are because of security reasons. Now, as you said, there's very conflicting reports coming out of that National Council, with the head of the National Council, the Justice Minister, saying that there have been some sort of indirect talks between him and the government, and that there was a proposal on the table that is trying to get to work out basically the details of an eventual exit of Muammar Gaddafi from the country, guaranteeing him no prosecution for either him or his family, and guaranteeing him access to some of his money. Now, then you do hear a few hours later from the spokesman of the National Council, who says there's not just a thing that ever happened, that anyway the blood spilled, the blood of the Libyan people spilled, or the wealth of the Libyan people is not up for negotiation. There is no kind of dialogue for with this government. All they want to know is when is Gaddafi leaving. So a very confusing image, messages coming out of this, and I think it is confusing also the people here in the east.
Indeed, the ordinary people, would they be prepared to see a deal that would allow Gaddafi to get off?
I'm sorry, Lauren, it's very windy. Could you please repeat?
Yes, I was going to say, I mean, you mentioned ordinary people there in Benghazi. Would they be satisfied with Gaddafi being given some sort of deal in exchange for his freedom?
Well, I think it's really a mixed bag. I don't think anyone would be satisfied with the idea that Gaddafi could walk away with guaranteed that he won't be prosecuted, because since I've been in this country, every single person I spoke to was talking about how they want to bring him to justice, how that all these massacres they allege and all these killings they allege have to be basically vindicated, and that he has to pay for all what he's done to the Libyan people. So I don't think that is something that the National Council would be able to sell very